This episode of Skirmish Supremacy is brought to you by Reformation Brewery, the official beer of your game night. In junk.
Do stuff in junk.
It's now recording.
We're doing stuff. Like
yeah,
recording.
We are. Yes. Well, I suppose we might as well get this bad boy going. Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. This is going to be episode 127. And tonight we're going to be discussing Lord of the Rings, the new, or well, I guess it's new rules from Games Workshop. Nick has been, for lack of better terms, like neck deep in this game pretty much since its inception. So this is pretty much going to be the Nick show tonight. He's going to be telling us all about what he's experienced playing Lord of the Rings, talk about the Atlanta scene a little bit, some of the things that are coming up. Like I know that right now there's some coordination with Adepticon to get some events going. And we're just going to cover everything that involves Middle Earth. Yeah.
Well, there's this thing, it's called the One Ring. It like rules them all and stuff. Yeah,
that thing.
No, so yeah, the latest edition is dropped recently from Games Workshop, and I jumped onto it. Well, first off, has a 2-player starter set, Battle of Pelennor Field. And I think the last estimate I saw was that it was about $100 or $350 or somewhere around there dollars worth of stuff if you bought it individually in the box that they're selling for $150. And it includes the rule book. One of the downsides is it includes the rule book, but then you have to buy a separate army book. And I mean, it makes sense because, in one sort of fashion, because if they tried to put the two together, it would be huge. Like old family Bible that was, as thick as your arm, or thicker, it would be at least that thick.
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
hey, I haven't had a chance to look at the rule book yet. So size wise, I have no idea.
Well, so, I mean, they're your standard rule book size. They're not that big or anything. There's 200 pages in the rule book, I think, somewhere around there, and I would say about an equal number in the army book as well. But the army book has just straight all the armies in it. So evil and good, it has them all listed in there, and you get all of your information for the armies. And then the rule book has all the rules, all your special abilities, except for one-offs. The nice part is that they didn't waste space on one-offs, such as like the Easterlings, which is the faction that I'm playing. They have a rule called Phalanx. No one else in the book has it. So where do they have it? Right on the model, or right on the units that have that rule. So for one, if it is a special rule that you'll see throughout the book, they just save space and list it out. I guess some other things with the army book and just army profiles is that it'll look really familiar to anyone who's familiar with GW games, especially recently. It has keywords for all the units. So things like Rohan, cavalry, infantry, man, or orc, so different keywords to describe what they are. And that's important because there's certain abilities or spells, and they may or may not be restricted to who can actually cast them. So you may have something that says, for example, Rohan, which comes in the starter box, has a special ability that they get, I believe it's +1 strength on the charge, but it says Rohan cavalry models, and it has it in bold. It says Rohan and cavalry. So even if you allied or you took some other units from somewhere else in the books, they couldn't use it because they don't have those specific keywords. And so,
okay.
They do go through, and then if there is stuff that you could take from another list, it'll also specify that, hey, they get this keyword, or maybe that item already or unit already had that keyword. And some of those examples would be like the Witch King of Angmar, another army that I'm collecting. The Witch King of Angmar is in Barad-dûr, which is kind of a general overall, here is some of the evil stuff. But then if you flip to the actual Angmar army list, it says, hey, here's the things in here, and it lists the Witch King of Angmar. Makes sense. He's the king. But then it goes in and it actually also explains that, hey, here's his profile, but here's what you change if you take him in this list. And basically it makes him a hero of legend, which leads into the heroes. Heroes are the people who lead your forces, and there's different ranks of heroes, and the different ranks tell you how many guys that they can bring in with them. So hero legend can bring 18 dudes with him. A hero, there's a hero of valor and fortitude, and then there's a minor hero and an independent hero, and they can all take a varying amount of guys, into battle with them, and be the captain. So you have all that stuff, and that's in the army book, and the army book's laid out really well. It's pretty fun. One of the things, and I've been saying this pretty much since I found it, in all of the books, you know how some books they have the bookmarks that you can pull out. It's a piece of ribbon basically that you can use and mark your book with. You don't usually, it's in like a fancy book normally. They put these in those rule books. It's the most awesome thing in the world, because you just you mark your page, you flip through, and you can just grab where that was and flip it open. I just was like, this is probably one of the coolest things since like sliced bread, to put something obvious into your rule books to flip around. I thought it was just a nice extra little touch. And so things I like about the game are the rules are really well laid out. There's everything you do is pretty well defined, and you go through and you can read the examples. It is one where you kind of have to read that whole section. You can't just read one part of it, because sometimes it has vagueness, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But the game, it takes a little while to play. It can easily, at about 750 points, it can easily take about 2 to 2.5 hours. Yet it doesn't feel like 2.5 hours. It's not like old style 40K. It's alternating activations. So I activate, so you roll off for priority, and priority is important for combat, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But when you get priority, you get to move all of your stuff first, and then your opponent moves all their stuff. And then you get to shoot first, and then they get to shoot, and then you go into combat, and with combat, you get to decide how fights are split up. You go through, and you really decide that at the end of the move phase, after your opponent has had a chance to move. You get to start sectioning it off, because part of it is that in the book they say you want to have as few combatants in a combat as possible. So if you have 4 guys, if you have 2 guys and they have 2 guys, and they're all somehow kind of touching base, more than likely you're going to split that into 2 fights instead of just 1. So it'll be 2 separate fights. And there's some places where you can't quite do this or that because of this or that. But those situations come up. but it's kind of a one of the principles, and they kind of reiterate it throughout the book, is keep it as simple as you can. That's the goal in this, is to keep it as simple as you can, basically so that you move through it faster. And and it really feels like, I know in the past it hasn't always felt like GW has actually play tested anything that they've written and put out. This feels like they play tested it pretty extensively. And so, heroes have things like might, will, and fate. You use might for doing heroic actions. You use will for casting magic, or, in some cases resisting it. And fate is trying to save when you get wounded. And so heroes have varying amounts of that. And heroic actions allow you to do something heroic. Like, you can, if you don't have priority, you can interrupt and do a heroic move, which allows you to move your normal movement, but also charge. So maybe you want to get in and stop somebody from charging. Your hero can spend the might to say, hey, I'm going to do this. And it's common that, obviously if I have priority, I didn't have to do that. But if my opponent declares it and I have the might to spend and I wanted to have that chance to charge, I'm going to spend it and do the charge. Namely, a good one would be cavalry, because cavalry get bonuses for charging.
Right.
So, I'm going to want to go, I'm going to declare that too with, whoever's leading my cavalry to charge you. And not have you just, get the charge off and stop me from doing it. In that case, it has a simple mechanism for roll-offs. A 1, 2, 3 goes to evil. A 4, 5, 6 goes to good. And that's what it is throughout the whole book. If there's a tie, you roll a 1, 2, 3 or a 4, 5, 6. And it either,
so then no matter who's rolling, then it will determine who does what first.
Exactly. So if you both declared that you had might, the person with priority rolls the die, and whoever wins, actually gets to do the action first.
Okay.
And then it alternates from there. So you may have declared you had might to spend with multiple heroes, and so it'll go, you activate one. Whoever wins the might roll gets to activate one, and then your opponent activates one, and then you activate, and then they activate, going back and forth until any and all might has been spent.
Okay.
And then there's one of the things, and I know this from talking with other people because I'm new to the game this edition. It used to be that anyone could do any of the heroic actions. Now it's been restricted quite a bit. There's 3 basic heroic actions that everyone can do. And then if there's any other heroic actions, it's listed on that hero's profile.
Okay, so it's not just generic heroic actions. Like, everybody's got access to the 3, but Gandalf, I'm just using him, like, I don't know, I haven't read the book, but I'm assuming his heroic actions are going to be more geared towards magic, where Boromir is going to be burning someone's throat.
Exactly, and that's one of the nice things, is that it's like, hey, you've got these 3, and then here's whatever else you get for these heroic actions that you can do. And it helps add flavor to each of the characters as well, because it does have things that are like that. And then you may have special items or special equipment, other war gear that you can equip, you pay extra points for. One good example would be the Witch King of Angmar, to go back to him, because he can become a really expensive model. He starts out at I forget if he's 50 or 70, something like that. Base, he starts out at 70 points. And in the end, you can make him about 255 points.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And part of that is he starts out with a certain amount of might, will, and fate, and you can buy him more. And if you just max out how much he can buy, and it costs 5 points for each point that you buy of either of the three, but if you buy the max, and he has maxes listed, as well as his minimum. So if you buy that up to the max, that puts him at 150 points. And then there's other things you can buy him. The most expensive mount would be the Armored Fell Beast, which is kind of what comes in the Battle of Pelennor Field box. Is you're building him and you're putting him on the Armored Fell Beast. So, and then you can give him like the Morgul Blade and then the Crown of Morgul and all that stuff to make him look like the Witch King of Angmar. And all of those together, I mean, each one of those items also give you some benefits and stuff like that.
Right. So in a way, it's very similar to like the old Warhammer Fantasy where, you might have, say an Ogre Warlord, but just because you have a basic Ogre Warlord, you could buy it different equipment that's going to take its points and either go like, it's an Ogre Warlord with basic gear, or it's a Ogre Warlord with all the super cool stuff that makes them really expensive.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the units have that. They have a basic listing of things. Another example going with the Easterlings is that they get armor and a sword. You can buy them a shield. You could buy them a pike. And a pike... They actually have a bonus. They can use a pike and shield together. And it actually specifies in the pike that you can't get the bonus for a shield. A shield gives you a +1 defense. But then in their rule, it says, hey, they can use this together. That's part of the phalanx. They've trained to do this. They can use this together. They'll get this bonus for you to do this. So then you can equip them with that. Or you could buy them bows. And in different war gear like that. Boromir can take the Horn of Gondor. That stupid freaking horn. Basically, anytime Boromir gets in a fight, he has the option of blowing that horn, and everyone around him has to take a courage test that's engaged. And if they fail, he wins the fight.
Just like that. No dice roll.
Just like that. He's like, boom, I win. It's something along those lines. I forget. It's been a little bit since I actually fought Boromir last, but it can really suck to have to take that courage test. Courage test is really another really simple mechanism. All of your guys have a courage stat, so a number. I'll go with 4 as the example. It's kind of the middle of the road, and you roll 2d6 and you add the 2d6 to your courage, and you're looking to get a 10 or better.
Okay.
So, if you're courage 4, you need, a 6 on 2 dice. So entirely possible, but it's amazing how often you fail that. And there's very little, if ever any, modifiers that really subtract things like that. That's another thing that they seem to keep at a minimum. About the only things that do are the ring wraiths. They kind of give a blanket anywhere within 12 inches of me, you're -1 courage. And I think that's actually most of the undead stuff. So it's a basic thing, that modifies stuff. It it has a lot of very... This is how it is to keep everything simple. And
okay.
And that is one of the things that I do enjoy in playing the game, is that most things are simple, or it's kind of intuitive. In combat, you have a dual role. And with the dual role, you may have 3 or 4 people involved. You're going to use the highest fight value of your guys fighting. So even if you had one guy that's fight 5 and 2 guys that are fight 3, you're going to go with that highest fight value. And you're going to roll all the dice, so however many attacks they give you, say, you have 3 guys, and so it's 3 dice against your enemy, and then it's the highest result on your dice. So you roll the 3 dice, and say you roll a 1, a 2, and a 5. Your opponent only got 1 die. He rolls, and he gets a 5. So you wipe everything out except for the 2 5s because it's the highest dice. Okay. Now, since you tied, you go with the highest strength, or you compare not strength, but fight values. You compare the two. If you're a 5 and he's a 4, you win that. You win the fight.
Okay.
Which I will say can get entirely annoying when you're fighting someone and say you had 5 attacks, they had 3 attacks, you roll 3 6s and 2 5s, and they rolled 1 6 and 2 1s, and yet because they're fight value and you dump all your other dice, so you have those 2 6s, but because their fight value is better than you, you lose the fight. You're like, but I rolled all those 6s for nothing.
I guess that was going to be my next question. Is like, if you roll multiple 6s, do they stack? But no,
they do not. They go straight away. Which can be entirely frustrating when you're playing a game. You like really need to win it. You get all excited that you got that 6, and then they go blue, and they get a 6 as well. Or actually, the thought I had when I went blue just a second ago, which was rolling the die over to be a higher value, is because you can spend might to up the result of your die roll. Not past a 6, but you can up it. So say you did get a 5 and a 5, and they are actually a lower fight than you, they can spend a might and make it a 6 and win that dual roll. That's one of the things you can basically use might to change the rolls of everything, but not higher than a 6. The 6 is the 6 is the ceiling. Which does work out.
Okay. So again, I'm asking this because I haven't read the rule book yet. And this will probably help for folks that are looking to get into the game. I take it like might is a finite resource per unit. Okay.
Yes. You only get so much might, and only your heroes have might. So a lot of the heroes that I play, like in the Easterlings, they only have 2 or 3 might for the whole battle. So you can't spend it a lot. Whereas you have some people like, I believe it's Boromir has 6 or something like that. Or Aragorn. He gets a free might a turn that he can just spend on top of his other might. So fighting against those people can be highly challenging. And it's not terrible. I like the Easterlings. I don't have a lot of named people, and fighting against Gondor, they have half the book full of named people that they can bring.
So you're running a mob versus like some heroes.
Well, and not necessarily I'm running a mob versus some heroes. Actually, our battles have been, they've had a really good amount, and Gondor is heavy armor and stuff like that. So they're very offensive, and then they have Boromir, who can also carry a banner which reaches out to 6 inches and makes them like +1 fight on top of what a banner normally does, which is a single reroll in a duel. You can reroll a die. Oh, wow. Yeah, and banners, most all infantry units can take a banner, so you can always have a banner around. They're expensive. They're a definite expense, seeing as most of your average guys are somewhere in the 7-ish points, for your average infantry dude. It's about 7 points. A banner is 25 points to buy. So,
okay.
You're talking about 3-4 infantry units or, guys that you're not taking to bring this banner in. But that single reroll can be incredibly important to playing the game. it can make a difference between everything.
Okay, gotcha.
So you have all those different mechanisms. You actually have 3 different ways to play. You have a narrative play, so you can play through, and they have scenarios that are straight out of the movies or the books that say this is what you bring and this is what you leave. Then you have match play where you actually match points and you have a limit. That's what I play the most. Or you have free play or open play, or I forget what they call it. It's the same thing that GW terms it and was big in Age of Sigmar, where it was, do you think that's cool? That's cool. You can bring all of those, and you just dump whatever out.
We called that anarchy.
Well, that's kind of what it is. And I was playing. He's not the only Gondor player, but in the local Atlanta scene, this guy he plays Gondor, and we were playing, and we decided to play a 750 point game, and he had only written his list of 500, so he was trying to quickly put something together, and he was like, would you be mad at me if I threw Aragorn in there with Boromir and Faramir, since book and all that wouldn't actually allow you to do that, doing free play but saying 750 points. He threw Aragorn in there, and it was a fun battle. I mean, it was fun, but he ended up with Boromir, Faramir, and Aragorn all almost clustered together. And holy crap, was that a painful fight. I was getting really lucky on die rolls, so I was beating on him, but at the same time, it just was extremely challenging because those are 3 extremely tough characters.
Right. Which I can understand. I mean, those are like serious heroes in the books, so like they shouldn't go down easy.
Exactly, and they definitely didn't. Actually, I don't think I ended up taking any of them down in the fight. I destroyed a lot of their other stuff, and in the end, I've gotten really lucky because in a lot of the games you have objectives, and it's not just killing for points. It's taking and holding spots, or like preventing from getting a certain place. And so far I've managed to win all of my games with my Easterlings by paying attention to not just the fight, but the objectives, and taking and holding people to those objectives, or keeping and holding them from it, or pushing them off, or just pushing out to get them just in time for the end of the game. It's pretty cool. And actually, to that end, one of the really neat things with the Easterlings, and this goes for everyone, every army has a special rule. I talked about Rohan earlier. They get a +1 strength on the charged Rohan cavalry. The Easterlings, for one, if their force reaches 50% or less, almost everyone's becomes broken at that point, and you have to take certain tests and whatnot. Well, if a Easterling force hits that, their army-wide rule says that they get +1 courage if they're broken, because they in all the books, in the Return of the King, it actually said that the Easterlings would fight to the last man. They wouldn't surrender. They wouldn't ask for quarter. In the Battle of Pelennor Field, they had to be killed to a man or woman.
Right.
You don't know because of the armor that they wear. So that's part of their rule. And then on top of that, to stay thematic with it, it actually also has in there that then if it's a variable turn game and you're supposed to roll a die to end the turn, they can, once per game, when that die gets rolled, go, nope, change it. I don't want the game to end yet. Roll it again. So if for some reason I haven't gotten to those objectives, and say it says on turn 6, roll to see if the game ends or something like that, or if somebody has like 3 objective, just different criteria, if it rolls and it's not what I want, I can just tell you to re-roll it.
Wow.
So it's really it's really fun. A mechanic. I haven't actually gotten to use that one yet, but I can't wait till the day I do, because somebody's going to be like, oh, "But I'm winning." Mm-mm. Let's have another turn. Go ahead, re-roll that.
Yeah.
So I guess to touch on some of the things that I at least grumble about, because I can't say that there's anything that I distinctly don't like. There's things that aggravate me. One of them would be the dual rolling, and it's just the single die. That makes me twitch a little bit when when it's multiple attacks. Also, the fact that English people don't know how to discern between die and dice. So they like to say in their rules, dice, when they are actually referencing a single die. I don't know why that is, but I've noticed it in a lot of European rule books. On a single dice roll. On a die roll?
Yeah.
So that's a little verbiage quirk that just makes me go, because
I thought you were going to say something about them putting you in armor.
No, I can get over that. That's nothing.
Yeah, I can't.
I mean, armor, color. They put they do weird spelling for a lot of things. Just like how aluminum they call aluminium, especially in Canada.
Yes,
but that's an aside. But the wife didn't know that till just recently, and she burst out laughing when she's like, "Why are they calling aluminum aluminium?"
Because they're wrong.
It's Canada. Can't be. Not possible.
Yeah. So,
so some of the things is that shooting is not quite worthless, but it's kind of worthless.
Okay. You're going to have to.
So to elaborate,
yeah,
all of your people have a strength. And then when you get a ranged weapon, that ranged weapon has a strength. So humans have just a regular human bow, and it's a strength 2 weapon. And then you have a shooting stat, which, unless you're elves, is somewhere around a 4 or 5 plus. So you rolled a hit, and you may have a 50% chance. Not bad. But then you've got to look at the armor of whoever you're shooting at, and so you have a 2-hit chart. And basically, with a strength 2, anything above a 3, you need 6s to hit.
Oh, that's gross.
So you're throwing, like I've tried taking a block of archers, so 12 archers, and they've all shot, and you get maybe, 1 or 2, maybe 3 hits out of it. And, you can't move. You can only move half and shoot. Some of the weapons you can't. And some of them have a higher strength. But for the most part, everything ends up being a strength 2, maybe a strength 3 weapon. Bow or crossbow or whatever, orc bows. And so they just have a very, very low ratio of conversion into actual damage. So, and it's been a discussion, here in Atlanta on whether or not, it's even worth taking them. Now, there are certain exceptions in there. Elves are really good at shooting with their bows. Makes sense. Nothing against that. And then there are certain other units that are really good at using bows that it makes sense for them to take. But, right now, I'm just not finding nearly as much value in it.
Okay.
They're hard to use. And that actually even applies to thrown weapons, which thrown weapons can be some javelins or spears, stuff like that. And a unit can actually move its full distance and throw it, or can be charging in, stop an inch out and throw it, and then continue their charge. And even there, very, very hard conversion into actual wounds.
Right. So I guess touching on that from like a tactical standpoint, from what you've seen, it almost sounds to me like thrown weapons are the better way to go, because if you soften up a unit and like, let's say like you got a unit of 10, again, I'm just throwing numbers out there, and you chuck javelins, right? And you're doing it on a charge. You chuck javelins on the charge. And even if you take out 2 guys, which sounds like that's about what the math would come out to, that still is at least you're getting a benefit because you softened it up by taking out 2 guys before you go into the charge, compared to like bows where you shoot and hope you take out 2.
Right. So the thrown weapons can be extremely useful for, yes, that purpose. As you come up, you throw, you see if you killed someone, and then you can continue charging in. And you can choose a different target to charge and engage in close combat.
Okay.
And part of that, I guess, plays into the fact that all of your units move individually. So every single, even if you brought a warband, every one of that is an individual. So they don't charge together as a mass. You charge them individually in. Now, you get to move all of your guys at the same time. So a lot of the times you are moving them as a mass, but it's not a rank and flank battle. It's more on the order of a saga battle, actually. You have... Okay. Yeah, I mean, right now my average list is about 45 guys at 750 points. So, you'll see that right around the same point, scale as a saga battle. Difference being is that you're bringing heroes mixed in, and each warband that you have that has stuff mixed in it needs to have some sort of hero leading it. And so those are your artificial caps to what you can bring, is what kind of heroes did you bring, and who, and then they can bring anything from your list. So like in my Angmar list, I can put out Burdur, however his name is spelled, Beard Belly, Troll Chieftain. I put him out there, and he can bring 12 orcs, or he could bring another troll in 11 orcs, anything like that. He can bring all of those stuff, all that different stuff with him. And, he brings them with him, and, that forms his warband. Warbands generally have to deploy within 6 inches of the hero that's leading them. A warband can't consist of more than one hero. So a hero can't bring in more heroes. But that isn't to say that they can't work together. You could put out a hero and another hero, and they just go along and do everything together. You just
right.
If for some reason you're alternating deployments, you can't deploy them and then deploy that hero with them, that extra hero.
Okay. So how does that work then with like armies? Like, obviously I've talked about, like, when I get into the game, like I've always wanted to do for Lord of the Rings a Nazgul army. Like that whole army would be, for lack of better terms, heroes.
Yeah, it would be all heroes, just like bringing in the Fellowship. And you would deploy each and every one of them individually.
Okay.
They don't have a minimum that they have to start away from each other. So you could, deploy this one. And if it was alternating deployments where you deploy one warband, your opponent deploys a warband, you deploy your one Nazgul, he'd deploy his warband of a bunch of guys, you deploy your next Nazgul, and just go back and forth until you both have finished deploying everything. Okay. And whatnot. I look forward to seeing an all Nazgul list on the table. I have seen an all Fellowship list. That is a sight to behold. And then actually I watched a battle report that they were reenacting Weathertop. So they had the 5 ring wraiths, and then they had Aragorn and the 4 hobbits. And it was really funny watching this battle report, because in the first turn, the 5 Nazgul managed to get really lucky and just whooped up on Aragorn and just completely knocked him out. But then they were fighting against the halflings, and the halflings were whooping the ringwraiths' butts. It was just stupid how bad that they got whooped up on by them. Though I have to say, anybody who doesn't bring Bill the Pony in a Fellowship list is definitely missing out. Because he has some fun rules, and plus it's Bill the Pony. And if anyone knows who Bill the Pony is, Bill the Pony was the most valuable member of the Fellowship. And I'll leave it there. But he has some fun special rules. For one, he acts as a banner, so if you have him within 3 inches, which is the normal range for a banner, you get a reroll on a dual roll. There's also, it has second breakfast as a rule, and he can help people recover stuff if they're within a certain range of him and they interact with him. The second breakfast special rule happens, and I think they can get a might back or something like that on a roll. So
that's crazy. That's funny, but I like that.
Right. And there's a lot of things in the book that are highly thematic. Like if you bring Éowyn, if Éowyn's on the table and Theoden's on the table and Theoden goes down, wherever Theoden went down, like if he was killed, Éowyn has to get there, and then if anyone comes within 6 inches of where Theoden went down, she'll charge them. But she has to stay, right near him if he's on the table. If he was on the table and went down, like leaves whatever else she was doing and goes over to where he fell. And then so there's all these other things that are highly thematic. You can take like Tom Bombadil and what was his wife's name? Golden Lily, or
I've drawn a blank. A lot of the Lord of the Rings characters. I've been reading far too much other stuff lately.
It's Gold something. I can't think of what her name was or is. But anyways, so you can bring one or both. And if you try to bring her, you do have to bring Tom. But you bring him, and Tom has a rule where he wins any and all fights that he's in. Just flat out wins. But you can't ever strike, get any strikes against anyone you were fighting. So he's just fun because you can bounce him around the table and he goes, I win this fight. So if there was some fight where you didn't want to lose, you can pop him over there, and he's like, "Yep, we win," and just move him around the table some more. He's got like a whole list of special rules that are just hilarious, and you could see him doing it. And then Fangorn, Treebeard, he can go into battle with Merry and Pippin. You can pay for the Merry and Pippin upgrade, and they have special effects they do if you bring them into battle with you. So you can play as the Ents, and stuff like that. Excuse me, been trying to get over the stupid cold.
You and me both.
Yeah, I know.
This is the sickness episode.
Yeah. So there's a ton of great stuff, and actually, the hardest part about playing Lord of the Rings is when somebody breaks out one of the armies you haven't played yet, and you see all of the cool stuff it can do. You're like, I want to do that one. I want to do that one. I want to do that one. Because there's just so many unique things, or models are just kind of unique looking, and they're fun. And really, there's very little that feels like, oh my god, I'm not going to have a chance in hell against this. About the only thing that I've encountered so far that kind of leaves me a little weird feeling, on the border of I don't like it, is siege weapons, and more specifically either the trebuchet or the Mordor catapult, because those things have a range of pretty much the board, or actually it is the board, the table. And they have a special rule called, if anyone in my army can see you, I can shoot at you.
Ugh, that's gross.
Right? So even if I was, we were playing on a 6x4, and your guy is all the way over at, 5 foot something from the corner where you deployed your catapult, he can see my guy all the way in that opposite long edge corner and go, yeah, they're right there. Yeah, John, just shoot it right here. Well, I can't see you or them, but okay. You know what? I know science fiction games that don't have shooting artillery at that well. Granted, even when you shoot, you do have to roll a die and for scatter, but when you roll it, you're still getting to hit something normally. On a 1, you're going to totally miss your mark, and your opponent can kind of say where it lands, but they have to choose within 6 inches of where it was aimed, and it can be your own unit, and it's your enemy's unit. On a 2 through 5, I can move, if you shot at my guy right in the middle, I can move it 6 inches any direction, but it still has to land on one of my people.
Right.
So granted, you can try and use that to minimize where it hits, but it's still hitting somewhere on your stuff that was aimed at. Which frustrates me just a little bit. I kind of wish that it had the older, artillery scatter rules of it deviates this much, and it goes this far away, instead of what it is, because it hurts. Now, granted, I played one battle where the guy was flinging rocks at me from it every turn, and grand total he took out I think 3 guys. So overall, it suffers from some of the same shooting issues that you see with other weapons. Not as much, because there's certain there's a sizable difference between an arrow and a large stone, which would be actually a strength 10 hitting somebody. But there are still some other mechanics in there, so that depending on who rolls, because this guy was rolling kind of terribly, so we were surviving pretty well. Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
Uh-oh. What are you looking at?
So siege weapons definitely, like, they have a range of the board, but like you were saying, they still like, they're not like, oh my god, super powerful. It's just the fact that like they could pretty much shoot anywhere on the board as long as somebody has line of sight can be a little annoying.
Right. It can definitely be frustrating. And it, it all depends. And not all of the siege weapons have that. Some of them have other limits. Some of them are more like ballistas, so it has to go in like a straight line. Some of them are in fact ballistas, and they'll go in a straight line through stuff. Which I guess, also brings me around to monsters. Like trolls, monsters have certain special rules. So on top of whatever special rules they normally have, they also have a section in the rules specifically for monsters. And what monsters can do is they have 3 different, I forget what they call them, basically monstrous attacks that they can do, or, things.
Okay.
One is they can take all of their attacks and specifically put them all on one person, and they use their strength, and instead of versus their defense, it's versus that person's strength. So a troll is usually a lot stronger than anything else. So you can, and it's called rend. So you're grabbing and you're just basically ripping whatever apart.
Grabbing stuff and pulling.
So, say there's a Gondorian captain in front of you, and he's defense 7. Well, if you're strength 7 and he's defense 7, you need a 5+ or whatever. But if you're strength 7 and he's strength 3 or 4, which is more on par for where a human would be, usually about 3, then you need like 2s or 3s to tear them apart.
Okay.
So you can do rend. You can do is it hurl? Hurl or barge? One of the two. Where one of them is basically you grab the person, you knock everyone around you away. They get like strength 3 hits or something like that. So if there was multiple people fighting you, you grab one of them, you knock everyone else, and then you throw this dude. You throw this dude a minimum of whatever your strength is, I think. So you throw them, and it. When I did it with one of my trolls, I know it was a minimum of 6 inches, and then you roll a d6 and you add whatever the result of that is to how far you throw them.
Okay.
And the only thing that'll stop them is basically walls. So I grabbed this one guy and I threw him, and what it is you throw him in a straight line from the center of your base through the center of theirs. And whatever they hit on the way gets knocked over and suffers a strength 3 hit. The guy that you throw suffers a hit for each person he hits, and then he suffers a hit from you throwing him.
Gross.
So it can be hilarious. And I did it. I was fighting this one battle, and the guy had Faramir there, and he was back a little bit, and there was all these guys. I mean, there was like this perfect straight line away from me. So I end up winning. I grab this dude, I throw him. He just goes bowling through this line of infantry. And there was even some of my orcs mixed in there, but you know what?
Who cares at that point?
And smacking this guy into Faramir's face, it was just hilarious because all these dudes go flying around. of course, I killed more of my orcs than his guys because you have to roll the hits on everyone that got hit. And my orcs had a lower defense than the Gondorians, so they got, beat up a little bit more. But, so there are those different fun thematic things. Actually, one of the funny things is like the Mamooks, the giant elephants. They actually are classed as siege targets, the same way as a wall or fortification would be. And so it has a different rule for shooting at it with siege weapons than, say, an infantry unit. An infantry unit, you have to do certain rolls like you're doing a shooting attack. It's similar, but a lot more straightforward when you're shooting at something that's kind of supposed to be a semi-fixed position or is just so freaking big that it should be pretty much impossible not to hit them. And so with that, it literally says in the book, you roll and either you hit them or you don't. If you hit them, you just apply the damage. If you don't, you just don't. And so it's your shoot value. If you hit, there is no more to hit or anything else like that. It like cuts out a whole phase of the shooting.
So either you hit them and it hurts them, or you.
Yeah, exactly. So here in Atlanta, it has definitely exploded with the new edition. We actually had a small games day this past Saturday, and we had 13, 14, 15 people show up throughout the day. There's a good 10 of us that are showing up, or around different times. We're playing on Thursday nights, so there's usually anywhere between 2 to 8 of us, just depending. I mean, it's a Thursday night, so it can be challenging for anybody to get out.
Right.
And we're planning for the first tournament coming up before too long. I know we're also getting together to play this Saturday during the Giga Swap Meet, during and after. We have been playing at Gigabytes. We're not exclusive to Gigabytes. It's just that's kind of what's central to a bunch of us. I know that there's a bunch of people that are playing up at Meeple as well.
Yes.
And that's slowly growing larger, as far as I know. Some of them have come down here, and I don't know if anyone from down this way has gone up there yet, but there's been some talks of doing that as well. So
they're getting the cross-store gaming going,
right? Well, and I'm all for getting a healthy competition going between the two stores, any of two stores, because then we can have a campaign series, called Lord of the Rings, the two stores.
Yeah.
I mean, if no one else saw that one coming, I'm sorry. It's been a bad joke, but I am all for it. I know that Alan, when I was talking about it to him down at Discover Games, was like, well, I'm going to have to go dust off some of my stuff. And I'm going to be giving him some demo games. And so we may actually, unfortunately, it may end up being, 3 stores. I don't know what we'll be able to call it then, but, maybe I'll just be, still be the battle of 2 stores and, just lump 2 of the stores together.
We could do that. Just, bring one into the fold.
Yeah. But, it is kind of funny, thinking about it. Discover is south. Meeple is east. So we have the Easterlings and the Southrons. So I guess that makes Giga, Gondor. Or Mordor.
Yeah.
The wife probably thinks it's more like Mordor. David has the One Ring to control of all of our paychecks.
Depending upon what he eats that day, the brown eye of Sauron. But anyway.
Well, I wasn't going there, but it has happened.
Yeah. So cool. So overall, I'm excited to get into the game once I get all my stuff cleared off my plate. You've been jumping into this, like I said, pretty neck deep, and you've really grabbed the bull by the horns on this one and really jumped into this game a lot more than I've seen you jump into a lot of games recently. Is there anything else that you want to talk about the Lord of the Rings game before we cut this episode?
Not a whole lot. One of the things that has been extremely enabling for this game is that there is a small but passionate community sitting here in just the Atlanta area, and we have people. We actually have one guy who was driving back and forth from Chattanooga. Unfortunately, his car broke down recently, so he's going to have to curtail how much he comes down. But he's there. We've got a couple of people coming up from Alabama to play. So we've got people from all over the region really coming to play this game, and that's part of what has really made it easy. Is there are just a few people that are extremely eager to play this game, and some of them to the point where they're discontinuing their other games, if they were playing any other games really, to the exclusive playing of this game. And the rules are pretty easy, and there's very little need for house ruling basically anything. If you keep the principle of keep it simple, that usually is the best route forward to use to play. Even if you're not overall interested in everything in the Battle of Pelennor Field, it's still a great buy. The one gripe I have about that box set is that, unfortunately, if you buy the Battle of Pelennor Field, you do not technically have enough captains in the box to take everything for either side. That would be the only downside of it. But then you can buy some of the other stuff. The only problem is I'm not 100% sure GW really expected as many nerds to get into this game as have, because stuff has been, I've seen some of the stuff to include stuff that I've been trying to get David to order at Gigabytes, and he's tried or has ordered it. I think I have some stuff waiting for me. But it's come into stock first thing in the morning, and by that night, it's already listed as back out of stock. They are having a hard time keeping up with demand.
First world problems.
Right? I mean, boo-hoo. Toy company can't keep up with all the nerds that want their toys.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's deal with it. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
You got a popular game. It's going to happen.
It definitely is.
I mean, as much as everybody gripes and... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it definitely is. This is to a point where, it's almost surprising how bad it is, because it is Games Workshop. Now, I know one of the other things is that there are some armies, I have some Last Alliance stuff, so elves and men, that don't have any real captains to bring with them, for you to bring into the game to play, because they took them all down a couple months ago or a month ago, just before launch, either because they're repackaging or resculpting or something with them. They took them all down and they haven't put anything back up yet. So, that's about the only other frustrating thing with it.
Okay. But, yeah, I mean, I know sometimes people get frustrated about stuff being out of stock, but it's kind of like, when Fantasy Flight runs out of stuff for Star Wars. Well, sorry, it's a popular game. I don't know what you want me to say.
Yeah.
So, like, well, everything hits critical mass. Like, even in video games, how many times have we seen games that come out that they weren't anticipating it to be as hot as it is, and the servers just break?
Right. No, definitely a thing that happens. And I think there's a distinct difference between the Lord of the Rings release and Fantasy Flight's operating model, because Fantasy Flight is a big fan of doing like the minimum they have to order. I swear to God. Because how long has X-Wing been out?
Oh, for a long time now.
Right. And they still don't ever seem to ever have enough to actually fulfill demand. I really believe that Fantasy Flight looked at what Nintendo does, and they're like, yes, we want to do that. And it's a way to, kind of artificially maintain a demand. Which I can't fault them. It seems to be working for them. I don't see anyone ever quitting playing X-Wing because they can't get what they want. I'm sure there's some people out there, but otherwise,
right? Yeah. Well. Oh well. Shit happens.
Right. Now,
awesome. Well, I think that. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, before we close out the show, I did want to mention, once again, we have the Discord server, and people are starting to trickle in. Actually, I pushed it out today, and I think we've had like 7 or 8 people jump in today into the Discord. So in the show notes, and I'll make sure Tim adds it, or I'll add it later, but in the show notes should be a link to the Discord. I posted it on our page as well. So if you just look through and you look for Discord, it should be right in there. Jump in. It's, it's a chat, so we can chat back and forth. We can chat about what you're working on, what you're painting. I post a lot of work in progress shots. Tim just says what he's doing. He doesn't ever post pictures. And if he does, he definitely does it the approved GW way, which is take a blurry ass picture with a potato. If anybody saw that video, I think it came out Monday, where they were talking about how to take pictures, and especially in the leaks department at GW, very grainy, a bunch of stuff cut off the sprue, so you only have a couple things left on there, and their camera was a potato. To make sure
Sounds
that
about right, yeah.
It was a terrible picture. So, that Tim has gone to the GW approved school of picture taking.
Yes. I take potato pictures.
He even got a new phone, and he can't even take pictures with it.
Yeah, I'm not good at it. But it's one of those things that I'll eventually get around to doing. It's just right now with there being so much crap that I've got to get done for other projects that are not Lord of the Rings. It's last thing on my mind sometimes is taking photos. Awesome. Well, I think that is going to cover episode of Skirmish Supremacy. We definitely look forward to seeing you on the definitely check out Lord of the Rings, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. To see more of the antics that Nick and I do, you can check us out on Facebook at Skirmish Supremacy. We also have Twitter, which we can be reached at Skirmish Supreme, because apparently Skirmish Supremacy does not fit in Twitter. And if you want to email us directly, you can reach us at tim@skirmishsupremacy.com or nick@skirmishsupremacy.com. Thanks for listening.